Yeah, pop the hood.
Pop the hood.
EJ25, no sh. Alright guys, we got some fluids and some parts. Some gearbox fluid and sealer, transmission fork, shift fork, flywheel and tool, pressure plate, clutch, bearing, and grease. Hey, I'm glad you're here. Welcome back to Baker Rebuilds. Today, we've got the WRX in to get a clutch job done and some fluids, so let's get busy. All right, to get started, the first thing we're gonna do is remove the drive axle.
Well, here comes out.
Next, I'm gonna remove our brake caliper and rotor for ease of access to the drive shaft. I'm gonna grab a 17mm wrench. Wait a minute, that's not supposed to be in there. Zip tie your rotor up out of the way, or your caliper, so that it's not in your way. Rotor just slides off. Using a 1.25" socket, we're gonna pull this drive axle nut out. Using a 19mm wrench and socket, we're gonna take bolts out of the coilover. There we go. Get ready to catch that puppy. Now using a crowbar, I'm going to pop this axle out of its socket. Go ahead.
Do you want to?
Wow. Well, at least your fluid was full because you were leaking.
Do you need something to catch that? Oh, there we go.
Sheesh. If you stay up on your maintenance and your fluids are full, make sure you have a catch pan under that so that you don't leak everywhere like we just did.
Yeah, that came out a lot easier.
There we go. Then we're going to start undoing our exhaust. I need a swivel and extension. Oh, rolled right through the oil too. Alright guys, once you remove the two nuts from the front of the exhaust, you're going to remove that bolt for the hanger. Ours is busted though, so it's a non-issue for us. Now we're going to pop off this exhaust hanger.
There you go.
That's off. Then there's one in front of your muffler that you're going to pop off. Then there's one on each side of the muffler that you got to take off. Now to get this O2 sensor out, we're going to cut this zip tie that's retaining the wire so that we have room to twist out the O2. And then we know from working on this car before that this O2 sensor is super tight. But we're going to try and use this crow's foot and hopefully break it loose. For those that don't know, this is a crow's foot. What? I'll take that.
I mean, that is a new sensor.
Oh, is it?
Uh-huh.
They must have got the one that was super stuck out then.
Yeah, me and my dad pried it off.
Oh, you guys did?
Yeah.
Oh! freaking caught it.
With your nuts.
Yeah, it's okay. Oh. Oh, it's heavier than it looks.
That's what she said.
That's how you take off an exhaust. So this bolt's 14 millimeter, this one's 16 millimeter. That's probably not how it is on all Subarus, but that's how it is on our Subaru. I'm gonna pull that all the way out yet, so it can give us some support. Now for the 4 14 millimeter bolts for this cover. Alright, now for these 4 bolts at the back of the drive shaft. A trick, if they're not accessible where they're currently at, is to put your car in neutral and take your e-brake off, and then just turn the rear tire so that you can rotate them around to where they're most accessible. Now you want to put your e-brake on. Now you can take it back off, please. Turn to the next one. Now you can put it back on, please. Now we're going to pull this bolt the rest of the way out. Now that we have our 4 bolts out of the rear end. That bolt really is being freaking stubborn. There we go. Just kind of balancing act to this out and drip fluid everywhere. Your gearbox was nice and full. Stop dripping! Yeah, when we pulled our drive axles out, we had a bunch of fluid leak down here, so you gotta make sure you wipe up your mess and clean up the ground so you don't get your hair all greasy when you're pulling the transmission out. Hey Josh, can we move this real quick?
Yeah, we'll grab that.
Thanks, buddy. Wipe up that mess. Okay, you can put it back. We're gonna go ahead and drain the transmission, guys. In hindsight, it makes a whole lot of sense to have done before we pulled the drive axles, but we're learning, you know, getting used to things. We're gonna have to probably go to the store real quick and grab a larger 6-star bit for the drain plug. So we'll be right back. Car spotting. I like speaking Spanish just out of the blue, but in Duolingo, man, I've gotten pretty good at Spanish.
I need to get back into that. I missed a couple days and I haven't gone back.
Yeah, I noticed. Can you say puta? Using a Torque 70, we're going to pull this drain plug on the transmission here. Maybe. Oh! Kind of scared to pull that as hard as I need to. I feel like, please don't get stuffed all over my impact, just break it loose, okay? I'm gonna go get the 1/2-inch drive breaker bar from the back of my socket drawer. Sometimes you gotta get a breaker bar in order to apply enough leverage
to brake.
Yeah.
Still.
Hope we don't break it. There we go. Against car. Okay. Don't push too much either way.
What was that?
Gosh. Ow.
Jeez.
Dude, I don't know. We didn't break the tool, which is good. About broke my hand. Oh, hey! It's loose! Yeah! Woo! Got it. My hand hurts. Yeah, dude, I hit my hand hard on something.
Dang, dude.
He's okay. He's a flesh wound. Ah, the joys of draining the underbelly of a car. You take out the drain plug and fluid comes out, and when the day is done, you feel accomplished. Alright, now that you have your transmission draining, we're going to come up to the top, move the transmission dipstick, and then we've got a couple electronic clips in here that we're going to disconnect so that we can proceed to undoing the bell housing bolts and dropping the transmission. So as Josh was preparing to do this clutch job, he ended up getting all new gear fluid. So we're going to drain and replace his rear diff with 80/90 as it calls for the rear differential. The bottom hole right here is where you drain from, and then once that is stopped dripping, you can put that drain plug back, and then that top one is actually where you fill the fluid from, and you just fill it until it backflows from that hole, and then you know you're full when the car's level. And that's how you replace the fluid in your rear differential. Alright, using a 12mm socket, now you're going to take off the things that are attached to your intercooler so that you can gain access to the center rear motor mount that it also bridges across the bell housing in order to get the transmission down and out. We got to detach. There's 3 plugs on top that we've seen so far, and we need to detach the motor mount and some linkage so that the top of the transmission is freed up and able to drop down and out. Almost lost the 10mm. That would have been all too on brand. Ours is missing a bolt, but there's one here and there's supposed to be one here. Ours was 10mm. Now we're going to undo the hose clamp that is holding the hose onto the throttle body. Can also use a 5/16 to undo that hose clamp, but mine is somewhere in this engine bay. That's out. So there was a hose clamp on that tube right there that we were able to access from the front. Loosened that, and that was the last point to get our intercooler out. So now we can detach this rear motor mount to free up the top of the bell housing on the transmission. All right, now using your 14mm, you can undo the clutch. Your car's just out to get me today, dude. All right, we're not asking anymore. There she is.
All right.
If you undo this top bolt, you'll actually leak all your fluid out and introduce air into the system, which is what you don't want. This bolt is grooved on the inside around this fitting, and that's where the fluid comes in from this hose, goes in through a hole in the bolt and is fed into the cylinder. So don't undo that top one.
So is that cylinder just for like when you press a clutch in kind of thing?
Yeah. You press your clutch in, it sends fluid from the pedal mechanically, well, hydraulically, to this cylinder, and that pushes the clutch fork with that bearing to hit your pressure plate and create the separation so that you can change gears with the clutch unimpeded.
I see.
And re-engage.
I see. That makes sense. You recording? Oh.
Yep.
You're spinning on this side.
Great. That's undone. That's really all we need. Take this ground wire off. Set that out of the way. We're going to take off this bracket completely off the transmission. You're going to need a 14, 16, and 17 for the bolts. We're going to take 2 12mm bolts off of here and then pull this C-clamp off so that this whole thing can drop down and out. And then we have an Allen head right here to detach the shift linkage. And then the rear end, for the most part, should be freed up and ready to drop. What are you doing, old man?
Trying to hook into a project on my ceiling fan.
Oh, good luck. I hope the results blow you away.
Oh.
Very scary.
Nice.
Ow! Now we're getting the transmission jack in here so that we can situate our transmission. Adjustments that I can use to provide the correct tilt and line up with the transmission. Now we're going to use a 14mm socket to start undoing all the bell housing bolts.
The window wiper cleaner thing and just stick it on its battery. Put it on the map.
I heard that in so long. Holy crap. Put it on the map like, hey. There's no way I can pull that right there. Like this. Son of a biscuit. Put it on the map. Now we're getting the remaining bolts on the passenger side at the bottom of the transmission. Stupid jet, I'm trying to talk to my peeps. At the bottom of the transmission, there's a nut on a stud on each side. And then there's about 3 bolts on each side, 3 or 4. That's still too tight. There's the bolt. Alright guys, we finally got the transmission out. You can see these 2 bolt holes. That's where the starter goes. And then after those 2, you have 1, 2 bolts on the driver's side. These studs were a huge pain to get off of. We were arguing with the transmission for about 40 minutes. Then we finally got that son of a gun. 2 studs at the bottom there. And then you have a bolt here, a nub there that winds the transmission, and then 2 bolts on the top. We ended up taking the downpipe off to afford us enough room to slide back with the transmission in order to clear these studs. But now we're finally out. We also had to tip the engine backwards, lift the front of it and tip it backwards a bit in order to allow us to come off these studs and clear the spline inside the flywheel there. So now we're going to remove, looks like 6 bolts around the pressure plate and start putting in, remove all the old stuff and start putting in the new stuff. Ew.
You can't get close to it to pry it off a little bit?
Won't quite.
Oh, there you go. Alright. I love chicken nuggets. Flywheel.
Here's our old flywheel. The bearing, you notice, is flush on this side. This was the side that bolts to the motor, so we need to be flush towards the clutch. Here's our old rusted clutch. You can see there's no longer grooves or anything. It's not quite down to the rivets, so it's not the worst one I've ever seen, but pretty no bueno. Here's our old pressure plate, very grooved. Can feel probably at least a 1/16 or 3/32 groove right there. Pretty hammered. We've got the bearing, a new bearing, we're gonna insert in there, flush on this side. Bolt this to the motor with these 8 bolts that are 14 millimeter. And then we can use the alignment tool. This alignment tool, the end of it slides in the bearing in the center of the flywheel. And then these splines hold your clutch while you tighten your new pressure plate onto your flywheel. Now that we torqued the flywheel bolts to 56 foot-pounds of torque, I'm going to use some brake cleaner and a clean rag to clean the surface of the flywheel and make sure that it's ready for that new clutch to go in. Now you're going to very gently, without touching the actual clutch material too much, use your alignment tool in that bearing. Slide your clutch up flush, making sure that your alignment tool is all the way in. And with that held there, now we're going to put the pressure plate on. Just like that. Now we're going to torque the pressure plate first to 11 foot-pounds. So on the pressure plate, we're torquing it to 13 foot-pounds. We saw mixed results saying 11, 12, up as high as 28. But then in a forum, we found a guy that was complaining that his bolts were snapping, trying to go to 28. So we're going 13, and that should be good for the pressure plate. So this is our new shift fork boot. It just goes up in this hole in the transmission. You just gotta flex it into place and get the bottom rubber lip inside so that it's locked in place like that. And then we've got a little grease pack. I'm gonna put some up here on the shaft of the transmission. Just kind of using the packaging here to spread this around a little more evenly. Throwout bearing just slides onto the fork like that. Your fork goes up and in here in your boot. This slides on like that. There's a little wire clip inside the back of this shift fork. You have to make sure to get it on the round ball pin holder or else this won't function properly. But now when this is pushed on, it moves forward the way it's supposed to, pivoting right here on that ball pin point. So we should have it in the correct spot now. And when we actually get there, you'll have to push up on the motor too.
That's fine. Well, it's like I can kind of like pretty much the same
Sorry, we should have blown that out.
What? Get it?
Yeah, it started for sure. It started good. That's amazing. That's amaze balls.
Dude.
Did we just slide in another good bit? Yeah. I've almost got stud on this side. We're just going to leave this on here though, because getting that in is crazy.
Ooh. What are you tightening?
The top 2 transmission bolts.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Alright, we've got our transmission mated back up. You can see there's no gap here. We've got that bolt in for our rear motor brace. We've got our downpipe back on. That's 3 nuts on the bottom and 2 bolts with nuts on the top. That's tightened in. The starter is in right there. You can see it tightened up. All the bell housing bolts are in. Transmission's totally tightened in. So we're ready to take this bracket and put it on the transmission. All right, we've got the transmission bracket back on. We've tightened up the rear motor mount with the ground cable attached. Don't forget that. We bolted in the hydraulic pump. We bolted in the master slave cylinder for the clutch. We had to compress this cylinder a little bit to get the bolts to line up for the holes, but then it bolted right in and it was fine. We've tested it and it's functioning. Here's the clutch working. There's also another ground for the starter. It's on the top starter bolt. Don't forget that. Now while Josh is working on putting in the intercooler up top, I'm gonna reinstall the drive shaft down below and we'll keep going. I reinserted and tightened the 4 bolts for the end of the drive shaft. I reinserted and tightened the 4 bolts for this bracket that covers the drive shaft. Tightened both of these bolts for the center hung bearing of the drive shaft. This piece just slides into place once it's lined up with the grooves. We tightened our bracket back into place, got all those bolts tight. This plug hanging down is our O2 sensor, so we'll plug that back in once we get the exhaust in. Josh got our intercooler back in, bolted on this part, tightened both. In a neighborhood, wow. Tightened both hose clamps there and there. We're gonna put our drive shafts back into the car. Then we can put in our new drive axle nuts. Throw the rotors back on. Get our calipers inserted back in. And put our wheels back on. You should be able to tell by the dirt on my face and how dirty my hands are. We've been busy. We're getting it done though. Get it running. Go for it. We looked it up, and for this transmission it says that the capacity is 3.7 quarts. So we're putting in about 3 quarts, and then we'll start it and check off the dipstick to finalize the fill point on the transmission. Alright, we got our transmission topped off. Used our dipstick right here in order to check the level and make sure. With the transmission, you make sure the level is full while it's running. Go ahead and see what this bitch has got. Now we're gonna go test drive it, make sure that we got everything all right. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. As I drop, there's a learning curve. Yeah, I'm free falling, can you hear me calling for you?